If us any chance we'll take it. Read us any rules we'll break it. We're gonna make our dreams come true. Doing it our way. Nothing's gonna hold us back now. Straight ahead and on the track now. Gonna make our dreams come true. Doing it our way.
Hey homies, what's up? Ryan Wynn here with our Friday night episode of Late Night INKS. And as you can see here, we have a sketch cover of the Book of Death from Valiant Comics from a few years back. What do we see? 2015. Robert Venditti, Robert Gill. They couldn't find another Robert, so they went with Doug Braithwaite. So anyways, I got a commission this week to do this. The proceeds of this are going to go to my store, my local store, Alakazam. So we are going to be using our trusty Raphael 8404 number 2. You're number 2. Let's get focus there. And we're going to wet the brush a little. Wipe off some of that water on the inside edge of our ink well, just to give a little more water to the ink. Dip about halfway to 2/3. Wipe off on the edge of the jar, then a little piece of board I have next to it. Then away we go. So some of you are new to the channel and are just here to watch me use the brush and learn yourselves. And I thought I would give some of you a little history of how I got here. Now, I was a young artist, my early 20s. I was working at an art store, let me get in frame here, in Southern California, and Danny Mickey came in, and he was shopping there, and he had a regular guy that helped him out there. It was a funky place to work. It was called Sterling Art, and if you've seen Empire Records, which I recently did on friend's recommendation, because I'd only seen parts of it, our art store was very much like Empire Records. We're a bunch of stoner, drug-using teens that were allowed to run the place, but we actually ran the place well. And this was all pre-internet, so we had giant clients. Like, I personally helped out all of the Disney and Mercedes-Benz designers. And by Disney, I mean Disneyland, like the Imagineers and stuff. And then a bunch of the car companies were located here in Southern California, came in. So this was, when did I work there? 99, 98, 99, something like that. It was before I worked for Quicksilver, the surf company. All right, let's see. Let's evaluate our work here. Just yammering away. And I must have been like 21 or so. And Danny had just formed Crime Lab Studios and was looking to take on assistants. And I had decided, it was funny because a couple weeks before that, I had decided and told my wife, I was like, I think I'm going to try to be an inker. That because in the old days, that used to be a path. You kind of start as an inker, and it's almost like being an apprentice. And then you could work your way up to penciler or whatever. Things don't really work so much like that anymore. But I was kind of like, hey, you know what? I'm going to do that. And then lo and behold, Danny came in, and the guy that usually helped him, the clerk that usually served and worked with Danny, was helping someone else, and he was like, oh, hey, Ryan's a comic book guy. He can help out Danny. And so, that's where I met Danny. And it was funny because we always had artists come in, and I hung out with like tons of independent, like super indie mini comic type comic artists back then. This was all pre-online, so everyone just did everything with a Xerox machine. And so he was like, oh, hey, yeah, I need to get some some inking supplies, and I was like, "Oh, what are you making, a comic book?" And he was like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "Oh cool, what do you work on?" Expecting him to pull out, his zine or whatever, and he was like, "Oh well, I work on Spawn." And I was like, "Oh crap!" And I hadn't really been buying comics for a while. I was one of those people that in the 90s kind of fell off it. It was my early 20s. I didn't really like what 90s comics was bringing anymore, and I didn't really like, I didn't really have money either. I was more interested in playing in bands and chasing girls at that point. Alright, so I've broken some of my own rules here. I've gone in and done some details before we finish the contours. So, as usual, when I catch myself breaking a rule, I correct it, and we're going to finish up the contours to the body here. Dip the brush. So Danny came in a few more times to the art store before I actually went to his studio. And he provided me with Xeroxes, and we would, this is going way back. So he had black and white Xeroxes of pencils or inked pages, and you would put a piece of vellum, which is kind of like rough tracing paper that can handle the nib. You would put that over it with a spray adhesive, a temporary spray adhesive, and then you would do your ink samples over that. Excuse me. Got the virus. No, sorry. Shouldn't remind you guys about that. This pure escapism here with Win. So anyways, I finally made it up to his studio. I'd done some samples. He thought I was worthy of trying out on some Spawn pages. I think it was Spawn issue 104. It's the first issue I did. Angel Medina was on pencils. Capullo had already left. Everyone always asks about that. And but I did get to practice ink over Capullo, and I did get to look at lots of his pencils and Xeroxes of his pencils and stuff like that. So that was a great learning experience. But anyways, my first day there, he's like, "All right, you're doing these backgrounds here on this one panel." I was like, "All right." So I was gonna do a door frame, a doorknob, and a windowsill. That was my assignment for the afternoon. And I dipped my nib. We were using a nib, and I was using a ruler. This is me. Put my fingers in the ruler position, as if I have one. So I dip my nib, I bring it over to the board, and I had overloaded the barrel on the nib, and a drop just went bloop right in the middle of the panel. It was actually right on the character's cheek, right there. And I was sitting at one desk, and Danny was sitting at a desk sort of behind me. We were like back to back, and I was just, I was crapping myself. I was like, what am I, this is it? My comic career is done on day one. I was like, oh man. But I'm also somebody that I don't shy away from making mistakes, or if I've screwed something up, I'll say, hey, chief, hey boss, I've effed this up. What can we do? I don't cower or hide away from that stuff. So I was like, all right, took a breath, and I said, hey dude, I just dropped a bunch of ink on this character's face. I know, I can't believe it. I know that's lame, whatever. And he starts cracking up. He's laughing so hard at just how silly and cosmically funny it is that my first day there that I did that. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, why are you laughing, man? Why are you laughing? And he's like, that's why we have whiteout, dude. And he took out one of those Pentel whiteout pens, shook it up, just like that. That's the sound, because you don't know what things sound like when they shake. They go. Took the whiteout pen, whited it out. He said, all right, wait 5 minutes and try again. I was like, what? And then he was like, oh, but also don't do that again. I was like, whoa, okay. So then I realized that, like, oh, there's humor in making mistakes when you're learning, but learn from that mistake. You know, it's okay to laugh at it once, but sorry, I keep going off frame here. I hope I haven't been off frame too much. All right, see, we're doing details again. We need to go finish our contours. We're going to finish all the outline lines for the character, the holding lines, whatever you want to call them. I like to call them contour lines. I think most animators call them holding lines. This counts. I know it seems like a detail. Oh, wet line. I went in to do that one and I hit that one, but it's okay. We can do a hair, a wispy hair to go over that one. Clean up this chin a little. There we go. So I ended up working on Spawn for years, and then I even like stopped for a little bit and then came back. I had to work some different jobs and stuff, and but yeah, I worked on so many issues of Spawn, from issue 104 up. I don't even know. We worked on like, it was years, man. It's like like 60 issues or something like that. It was like 4 years or something like that. So that was a really fun part of my career. So that's where I started out. I started out as part of Crime Lab Studios. We eventually kind of all went our separate ways, but Danny and I still talk often. I'd like to get him on the show to do an interview. He doesn't like doing that kind of stuff, but I almost think I can talk him into doing it. I think if I threaten to reveal all of his inking secrets unless he does it, then, I mean, come on, he has to, right? Plus, that's always fun to blackmail your former mentors and friends, right? That's always a good time. Happy little blackmail. All right, Ninjak's got some funky armor. I want to make sure I got it all right. All right, so we want to do these circles here. So we're just gonna go for it. A little off. It's gonna be solid black, so it's okay that I had that. There we go. That one was better. So now that we've done all the contours, we'll go and do this hair. How are we doing on time? All right, we're doing pretty good. We're not rushing, but we're making good time. So there were 4 of us that were part of Danny's studio. There was myself, there was Alan Martinez, who you'll see his name on a lot more issues than my name appeared in of Spawn. Alan did lots of amazing work. He was able to mimic Danny's lines so well. And then there was Victor Olazaba, who a lot of you may know from being Humberto Ramos inker on a lot of his Marvel stuff. And he would take the bus from Mexico. It's crazy. It was such an adventure for him to get to the studio, and then he would stay at Danny's for a few days and then take the bus back to Mexico. Because again, this was all free us. The internet was around, but we were barely communicating on it. Even editors were calling the studio every day instead of emailing. So the 4 of us would often work together at Danny's. Most of the time it would be me over one night and then Alan over one night, and then 1 or 2 of us over whenever Victor could come by, and that would be once every few weeks. He would come and pick up batches of pages and then come and drop them off. That was also pre everyone having scanners. Scanners were thousands of dollars. So not everybody had one. And I think even when I started with Danny, the only one he had was, he might have had a small one. You know what I mean? Small scanner. Come on, guys. But either way, we weren't scanning and turning in pages originally. We were getting them to the FedEx guy. So there are many times where we were erasing pages and putting the last touches on, and we could hear the FedEx guy coming around the corner. All right, we're going to start laying in the shadows here. I'm going to go for heavy loaded brush. I'm going to lay in the blacks like this. Boop, right off the edge. And you notice that I always use the brush in a sweeping pattern. I don't push it back and forth. That'll cause your bristles to twist up, bend and tweak. If you're using a sable hair brush, think of it as like your own hair too. Not like, oh, spiritually, think of this as your own hair, man. No, not like that. Shut up. What I really mean is think of it how your own hair reacts and stuff. That's why I use the brush cleaner that's got a bit of conditioner in it. It cleans it out, and then the conditioner keeps the brush hair healthy. And the healthier the brush hair is, and the more open the bristles are to absorbing and moving and flowing the ink. Sorry, like I've said in many other videos, I do this stuff off the cuff as I'm working. So I'm trying to come up with the terminology and everything as I'm doing it. So sometimes I'm a little clunky. But you guys are bearing with me, and I'm getting better with each episode. And I think by the time I get to episode 5,000, I should have it down. What episode are we on? Okay, we got a ways to go. Okay, right off the edge. So normally if I'm just inking on a board, you don't have this comic book like a sketch cover here. So that's why a lot of this stuff is on my desk, because I work right off the edge. And I could, sometimes I'll put a piece of paper down underneath, but a lot of times I don't. All right, so you may have heard the term spotting the blacks. When I came into comics, that's what this was. It was filling in all the black shapes, often already delineated with X patterns by the main inker in the studio, so that you know what, I gotta go around here. Where before I got into the industry, spotting the blacks was almost like a finishing term, where there would be no shadows in the pencils, and the inker would go in and do that. And you'll see a lot of contention between like John Buscema and Jim Shooter and stuff like that on that terminology. Because John Buscema kind of, to the public, explained it one way, and Jim Shooter didn't like that. But yeah, Jim Shooter didn't like a lot of stuff, but I'm still a fan of his. All right, go around the Valiant logo. So as an assistant, when I was starting at around late 90s, early 2000s, you came in and you spotted blacks. You would do the borders. You would outline the borders before the inker inked the page. Then you would maybe also do the backgrounds if you were skilled enough to do that. And then you would do the fill in all the blacks after the head inker had inked the pages. I like filling in all this black. It's very meditative. Again, you should be steadily breathing throughout all this. I haven't mentioned that in a couple episodes, but the brush inking process is very meditative. Even if you're on a crazy deadline and you've got to move through stuff really fast to get it done, you're going to get the best work and the best results from working calmly and breathing steadily. If I'm not yapping away like I am to you guys, I like to sort of relax my jaw and let my mouth almost hang open a little, like some mouth breather. Oh, sorry, that was mean. Shouldn't use the accent and call somebody a mouth breather. But you know what I mean. So I let my jaw hang. I breathe in through the mouth, or breathe in through the nose, and then out through my mouth. And it keeps me very calm and very relaxed. I'm doing too many strokes to fill in this area. So I'd usually use a bigger brush for that. So I want to wet or load up the brush with more ink. And with Ninjak, we're not afraid of some of the black shapes hitting each other. Like this black shadow on his ab is going to go right into the black of his armor. And that's okay. We want that. We're here, the black of his abs and ribs on this side is going to be up against the white parts of his arm, the armored parts. Yeah, I don't want to do too much rendering on this piece, and it's not because rendering takes long, but Ninjak looks really good with a lot of solid black. See, when I do those moves, what I'm doing is sort of like I curve up, stop the hand, and I curve back with the brush. So it's all about the mechanics. It's how do you twist your elbow and your wrist and this, that, and you get all that from just I know it sounds lame, but from practice, where mileage doesn't really count with drawing or painting, but with inking it does. So I always tell people, like, just fill up pages and pages and pages with practice inks like that. But when you're really practicing, you're going to take this set of lines and only do those, fill up the whole board. Then move on to different types of lines and fill up a whole page or a board. You want to do that. And then do that for a few days. Then see how much better you've improved by trying to ink a figure or something like that. But don't spend all your time practicing on doing, inking a bunch of popular pencilers inks. You want to keep doing that, but you don't want that to be the only way you're practicing. And like I even tell people in most of these videos, tell you guys, just do a warm-up before you ink that piece. Practice some of the lines you're going to practice before you do them. Practice some of the lines you're going to practice some of the lines you're going to pull off on the page. All right, we are running out of places that need inking. And we are at 22 minutes, not bad. The brush is pretty wet right now, so we got that extra bloop there. Shouldn't have done that. There we go. So getting up close to the face, and then we'll rule out the sword. Let's see, I don't want to smudge anything. Got to be very careful. This is for a very giving fan. I do like the crease in Ninjak's mask sometimes. There we go. We'll outline the sort of shapes we're going to have for the shadows. So the brush is wet, we'll make those lines nice and thick. So when we go to fill it in later, or in a second, it's easier to fill in. Alright, so I'm turning the board by the edges, because right now I got a lot of wet ink here, 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 and if my finger slips, ugh, I don't want to have to do a bunch of whiteout on a sketch cover, you know? Know what I'm saying? Alright, we good? We're good. So if you are studying old inks and you've got a bunch of old Danny Mickey books from his days at Marvel, or anything from the Spawn era that says Crime Lab Studios, I may have been the background or assistant inker on the project. I ended up assisting quite a few people. I did a short run, very short run, like a couple issues with Norm Ratman, but he didn't normally use assistants, and I was doing other things. I just kind of helped out for a couple months while he was catching up on stuff. And that was kind of cool. We did some weird indie kind of adult Chuck Dixon project that I've been meaning to ask him what it was years ago, and helped him out on some Superman stuff, and that was kind of fun. I think that was actually around the time I was working with Weems. So I also was Joe Weems' assistant and John Livesay's assistant. And, I became Livesay's assistant I became Weems' assistant because he lived with Livesay, and Livesay had called me. He had gotten my info from Danny, and I had to bounce out of comics for a while, sometime in my 20s, and I was working a job that I'll explain some other time. But I was making pretty good money, but I still wanted to get into comics. Which, looking back now, I'm like, maybe I should have stuck with the money and just made indie comics the whole time. Which I kind of did. I've always had my foot in the indie well, which again, we'll talk about that more later. But yeah, inking for those guys was fun, especially since they were roommates and they had a big studio set up at their house. So they had a bunch of tables, like 4 tables, so a bunch of us would get to work at the same time, watching movies, playing games, a little drinking, a little smoking. It's good times. All right, we're going to go and do some rendering here. Rendering just defines the shapes of things. Okay, those are wet. That's wet. Okay, we can get close here. We're going to do some cool bleeds. Some fat bleeds here. And then here as well. Do some of our diamond lines. Okay, dry. A little bit of shadow and lines there. And this is sort of called softening the edge. You create this transition from the black to the white. You'll notice I'm following the curvature, but I'm trying to get the black points to meet as close as possible. So it almost looks like little white triangles going in, little black triangles coming out. Let's see, what else do we need to do before? Okay, we're going to do a little cast shadow here. And the cast shadow is from his torso, and it's cast over his right arm here. You know what, we're going to start light. Kind of messed that up already, but we'll fix it. There we go. And the cast shadow sort of gives depth to the image. Excuse me. All right, the last thing we have to do is rule out. So we are going to get we're just going to use a Faber-Castell S. It's a snake pen, that's what the S is for. No, it's small. And we've got our ruler from Japan that is centimeters, not inches. We're not over any wet ink. We'll line up the edge of the blade and the handle. We're going to bring it nice and steady. I should have done the little hilt piece first. See? Mistakes. Oh no, actually I decided against that because that's still wet. See? Smarts. Gosh, I'm so smart sometimes. Alright, we're going to slide it over here. Make sure it is parallel. All the way down. And then down here as well on the handle. The butt of the handle we can freehand. A little weight to that. And then the tip of the blade. Do that freehand. A little bumpy with that sketch cover popping up. Alright, we are dry across here now, so we can do this piece here. Alright, we'll close those up. Close up any lines that didn't quite meet. Okay, I think we're done. Let's look it over. Yeah, we got all our contour lines done. We got the face looks nice and clean. I don't think I'm going to do pupils. I'm going to leave it just like that. No, we forgot he's got these little bolts here. Where his armor screws together. Forgot that. Other than that, there we go. There's Ninjak. 30 minutes. Wow, if you stuck with it, thanks for watching. If you bailed, thanks for watching anyways. But you're not hearing that anyways because you bailed. So, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Until next time, take it easy.
And if you haven't already, head over to alternaaccess.com and check out the book I wrote, Gods and Gears, with art by Dean Kotz and letters by Wes Loker. Issue 4 is out soon.
Stupid cat.